there, welcome back to the Ginescast. I'm your host, Gina Nunziato. Thank you so much for joining me. So we're about 2 weeks out from VidCon, and I would really like to give you some live Ginescasts when I'm out there, and I'll be doing a wrap-up as well. But in the meantime, I have a couple things in my old pocket here. I just want to say thank you so much for all your comments and all your nice opinions about the cast and about what we're saying here. I appreciate everybody's feedback. And I'm just gonna keep going until we hit a stride, I believe. So in the meantime, please sit back and enjoy the Ginescast number 5, A Depressing Conversation. I don't suffer from mental illness, but I know people in my life who do, and not just on the internet. I could sit here and give you a rundown of everything, but you know what? Those are not my stories to tell. I'm only mentioning this because I'd like to give you my experience in dealing with mental illness. There is, I believe, a mental health crisis in this country, and it takes on many different forms. At its core, I believe internet culture is really all about sharing experiences that we do have, regardless if they are personal or maybe by proxy. I think a lot of people more so use by proxy than anything. But you do get a lot of personal experiences. We're sharing and we're relating to one another. And those who are the most popular among us are just that. They're relatable. Unless they have a career that was bought and paid for by daddy or some other entity, most people reach the top of peak popularity based on who they are, the connections they have, and their personality. And if you can't showcase a good personality or relatability in some way, you're not going to capture attention. I bring this up because of the recent tragic news of Anthony Bourdain passing away. The story goes that he committed suicide, which is, in some people's eyes, a very quote-unquote selfish act. But in my eyes, I believe that if somebody does that, it was this last resort kind of thing where they didn't see any other way out of whatever they were going through, and they chose to end their life. It's a tragic event either way because there's a loss of life. But the constant that I hear about Anthony Bourdain is how he related to people. He had a great show where he brought all sorts of different people's stories to the surface. And as Bourdain told other people's stories, you were getting his as well. Unfortunately, his came to a tragic end. And it just kind of solidifies the thought that you can't ever really know what's going on in another person's mind. And something like depression or mental illness just doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how popular you are, what you're going through in your life. If that mental hold has a grip on you, you don't know how you're going to handle it or what you're even capable of. And unfortunately, when we have stories like this, a very public figure committing an act as such as this, the question remains as to why. We, as people, are on a never-ending quest to figure out why something exists, why we are the way that we are, why we think the thoughts we do, why someone else acted like that, why this thing is popular, why everything. And I think sometimes the answer to that question is first turned over towards everybody else before we ask ourselves the same question. It's so much easier to ask somebody, why did you do that? Or why are you acting like this? Why do you think this is okay? Versus asking ourselves, well, why are we angry? Why do we feel a certain way about something? It's much easier to project anything that you're possibly going through onto another person, which is why I think it's so easy online to see and talk to somebody and you kind of need to know why someone's having such a hard time in their life, why they can't just smile and be happy when, oh, that's something that's so easy for me to do. Why not you? I truly believe that everyone has a story to tell. And the more we realize that about people, the more that we'll be able to connect with another person. But as I said in the Vendetta era #1, Ginescast #1, it's so much easier to reduce somebody that you're talking to online to nothing more than words on a page. So you don't realize that that person who comes out of the woodwork and say, I struggle with mental illness, or I struggle with bipolar, I struggle with depression, you kind of on some level think, oh, well, maybe they're just saying it to bring attention, rather than possibly thinking, well, maybe they just want to share their story too. I have very little reason to doubt somebody when they're telling me a story, unless it sounds completely made up or it's something like you see on that Reddit sub channel, I have sex or whatever. That's a bunch of bullshit. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about someone who is sharing their experience. There's no reason for me to think that they're full of it or to think that they're lying in some way if someone is trying to explain why they feel a way about a certain thing. So I'm always here to listen, and I'm always here to try at least to understand why. But then you'll run into the people online who sometimes do a thing where they expect everyone that they're talking to just simply know about their past pain and their past struggles. And they will get mad at somebody and they will rip on them and call them names if for some reason the person doesn't understand everything that they're trying to say. It's a very dangerous spot to be in when you assume people know things about you as an internet personality. Only you know you better than anyone else. It's not up to another person to tell you how you should feel about something or how you should act or what you should be going through. Just because you happen to be a woman doesn't mean you have to adhere to everything and every tenet of modern day feminism. Just because you are a gay individual doesn't mean you have to adhere to everything that the LGBT community is pushing for. There's the select few among us who think they know better for you than you know better for you. And I don't think we're going to get anywhere. No conversation will occur if we keep ripping on one another and tearing one another down over these differences and these differences of opinions and these thought processes that are all different from one another. And this includes people from, yes, both sides of things. There's a societary conversation going on that tells me that one group is more marginalized than another group, and it's not okay to ever rip on them, but the conversation does kind of flip and they can kind of rip on the other side. Kind of like women who rip on men, women who hate men, gay people who hate straight people, black people who hate white people, trans people who hate cis people, Democrats hate Republicans. All of this hate goes vice versa. I'm not saying that it doesn't, of course not, but disrespect begets more disrespect. I believe that there are groups of people who are kind of socially acceptable to rip on versus another group. It's like this big push against quote-unquote incels or people who like Jordan Peterson because they happen to be men who are less than alpha, I guess. No thought enters the person's mind to maybe not make fun of them and maybe try to understand why they would have these kinds of extremist mindsets in some way. I only bring this up because I want this conversation to happen between everybody. And I think things that I've observed, things that I see, especially online, I think they need to be called out from any avenue. Because I'll be the first one to tell you, you do not know what's going on in another person's mind. You have no idea what another person is thinking. You can't even fathom someone else's thought process sometimes. I try to do it all the time. I remember being a 6-year-old kid looking in the mirror, wondering why I think the way I do, just staring at myself, never finding out the answer. And then I would sit there trying to process how, like, a friend of mine in kindergarten would think. I couldn't do it because you just physically can't. I don't know the science behind it, but I know that we all don't think alike. We can't. We're not wired that way. Your thought process is vastly different than mine. And I'm just thankful that I'm able to articulate mine in some way. I know that not everybody has this luxury, so I can't judge somebody for not being as wonderfully eloquent as I am. It takes a while sometimes to remember that, but I do believe if you listen hard enough, if you just have the patience to listen and to understand, that someone's thoughts and their true natures will come out. And I believe this is something that made Anthony Bourdain very special. He had that ability to listen and to connect with people. And he did it on a global scale, and that's a rare talent in this world. Being able to thread that needle and weave together all sorts of different cultures. We can't get anywhere when we act like one group of people is disposable. And that's easy to do on the internet. It's easy to do that on internet culture because, of course, someone is quote-unquote disposable online. All you have to do is mute them and you never have to see them ever again. That doesn't mean that person doesn't exist. That doesn't mean that they had thoughts about how you treated them that day or how they treated you. You just don't know. And it's not something I'm saying we should harp on and we should just never stop thinking about, but it is something to kind of let sit there and ponder once in a while. Maybe you don't need to be a dick to that person who hates Trump or hates Hillary. Maybe that doesn't accomplish anything. Maybe Robert De Niro standing up in front of everybody at the Tonys saying, "Fuck Trump," isn't going to accomplish anything. It's just going to make people mad, and we're going to continue this cycle of toxicity where we don't get anything done. There's so much toxicity in this world, and I believe it's easy to get down about it. So I don't blame anybody that feels bad or feels lost in this world. Now, I say that, but I also know that depression, clinical depression, and mental unwellness is far more than just quote-unquote feeling bad. That's a scope that is very wide and still being discussed to this day. But when it comes to things like that, there is no one-size-fits-all answer because everybody's different. It really comes down to feeling that level of simplicity about things sometimes. It's a complicated fact, but when you boil it down, it's just as simple as we're all different. I'm never going to tell somebody who's clinically depressed or bipolar to just quote-unquote cheer up. That's not simple. But I sit here and tell you that I wish for it to be that simple one day. I wish for people to be able to overcome this or find a way to live their best life. I don't wish ill on anybody. And when tragedies occur, I sympathize and I empathize with the people who've lost a loved one. I just don't think I'm wired that way. I want to help bring people's stories to the forefront because I believe that sharing our experiences helps us grow. People grow. We learn. We change. We're the same soul, but we're never really the same person. We always are shedding layers and we're always learning new things about ourselves. And I do believe that no matter how down one feels, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. There's always a way out. There's always storms that need to be weathered. I have a lot of hope for this world. I have a lot of hope for those who are suffering, that they can find their way out. I can't tell you the answer as to why or how to get out of it. That lies within you. I just hope staying positive about it is the correct path that I need to be on. Because after all, we only have one life to give it a try. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ginescast. Like I said, I will be going to VidCon in only a couple short weeks, and I will be reporting live and giving you a little rundown of everything that's going on there. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it wasn't too quote-unquote depressing, but I think that these are important conversations to have, and I think that it's a good thing to get at least some kind of thought out there for all of you. I don't have all the answers, and I know that nobody does, but if I can offer anything, that this is, I guess, my contribution. The Ginescast comes out every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you like this podcast, please give it a like and a share, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you want more from me, please follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and WordPress at HelloGines, or shoot me an email at gina.annunziato@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Ginescast. I'm Gina Annunziato, and I'll see you next time. Take care.